good morning, and I'd like to welcome everyone from near and far who are joining us here via Zoom for this incredibly important lecture regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. We are committed as the Department of Neurosurgery at the University of Miami to support the Black community, and we condemn all forms of racism. As medical professionals, it's our mission to alleviate suffering. Racism is a public health crisis, a pervasive disease that has resulted in significant health disparities and the deaths of too many Black Americans. I'm going to share my screen with you. So as you can see by the picture that's being presented here, and it was just taken a few weeks ago, and it was a demonstration essentially led by our president, Julio Frank, and our dean, Dean Ford, who you'll meet soon. And we as healthcare workers have the opportunity to serve as an example and lead in dismantling social injustice and promote diversity. In so doing, our goal is to educate ourselves, our peers, and our community. Today, we pledge that we will create an educational series with experts in diversity to help us recognize the plight of the Black community and confront our own inherent biases in order to educate our faculty, trainees, and other neurosurgical departments within the U.S. As you can see from this slide, we have a fantastic program today. It's entitled Black Lives Matter, a priority today for neurosurgery, our community, and our nation. We have a number of speakers listed here, including Guy Johnson, who's the son of Maya Angelou and an author and poet, Dr. Henry Ford, who you'll meet live via Zoom and have an opportunity to ask questions of, who's the Dean of the University of Miami Medical School, Dr. Barth Green, who's our Executive Dean of Global Health and Community Service, Alonzo Mourning, Miami Heat NBA champion and Hall of Famer and community leader, Pierre Garçon, NFL star and humanitarian, Eugene and Wallace Tinney, artist, writer, civil rights leader, Detective Pierre Chery from the City of Miami Police, and Dr. Elvis Francois and his colleague, William Robinson, who are both orthopedic residents at Mayo Clinic in Rochester. One of our other goals is also to create a scholarship fund to support Black neuroscience students to perform research within the Department of Neurosurgery. Our goal is that this concept will be incorporated in other medical institutions and most importantly into the heart and soul of our specialty, not just for now, but for future generations. Finally, as you watch this program and meet our guest speakers, you will no doubt be moved by their heartfelt messages of hope. Acknowledging that we have much to improve upon, we are committing to realizing this goal of a more just society, and this is only the beginning.
Hello, my name is Elvis Francois.
And my name is William Robinson.
You know, these are very difficult times that we all find ourselves in, but in very difficult times, like great opportunity for change.
Between the global health pandemic and the incredible racial injustice that our country finds itself in, we need to rely on the future generation to get us through it. Sadly, in order to achieve the platform that they need to be our next leaders, often the biggest hurdle is financial hardship. We can do our part to help those people get there.
You know, when I grew up as a kid in Miami, Florida, it was very difficult for me, but my dream was always to become a doctor. And there were many benefactors and many scholarships along the way that allowed me to sit where I am here today in front of you. And now it's incumbent upon myself and on anyone else out there watching to donate what you can, donate your time, donate your resources so that we can help pull those behind us forward.
We wanted to share a little bit of music with you guys to help inspire you to donate and give what you can to help the future generation achieve the goals that they desire to be.
Absolutely. We hope that this music inspires you as it inspires us all. Much love.
God bless you guys.
Imagine there's no heaven.
It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only skies. Imagine all the people living for today. Ooh, you might say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday that you will join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You might say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday that you will join us, and the world will live as one.
My name is Alonzo Mourning, and it's truly a pleasure to speak with you today. I stand tall and proud in front of you today as a member of the world champion Miami Heat. I'm also proud of being an inductee of the NBA Hall of Fame in 2014 after overcoming a life-saving kidney transplant in 2003. It pleases me to know that the Department of Neurosurgery at the University of Miami Medical Center is endowing a fellowship that is specified for young Black high school, college, and medical students who are interested in neurosurgery and neuroscience. Talk about underrepresentation. They are almost invisible in these specialties, but we're going to change that today by raising the funds necessary not just to fund this scholarship, but to endow them forever. We would like to take this nationally and globally so that other centers around the world can replicate this initiative. Please, we would like you to reach into your pockets and dig deep to help these dreams become a reality. Black Lives Matter.
Hi, my name is Pierre Garcon, an 11-year NFL pro. Before going to the NFL, I went to Norwich University and Mount Union College. The opportunity they gave me to go to Mount Union College was grants and scholarships. Today, I would love to talk to you about an amazing scholarship, fellowship grant that the University of Miami Department of Neurosurgery is doing for Black lives, because Black Lives Matter. We are definitely underrepresented in the Department of Neurosurgeons, and the University of Miami is stepping up to change that. I'm honored that they're doing that, and I really want you guys to support it as much as I support it. Please continue to help Black Lives Matter, and let's continue to make a change. Thank you.
When Barth Green asked me to prepare a 5-minute statement related to the Black Lives Matter protests, and he gave me 2 days to prepare a thoughtful, cogent, yet inspirational statement, I immediately realized that he had me confused with someone who had more talent. I had a visceral response to both the request as well as the subject of the request. First, anyone who knows Barth knows that if he thinks you can be useful, he will find a way to make use of you. I'm not complaining, because generally the things he supports are for the good of the commonwealth of human beings, without regard to race, religion, sexual or cultural persuasion. That is all good as far as I'm concerned. I support all efforts that are for the good of the commonwealth we share as citizens of this wonderful country, which we seek still to make a more perfect union with the founding ideals and concepts of our Constitution. Until Barth asked me, I had not really given my support of the Black Lives Matter movement any serious investigative thought. For me, it was merely an affirmative statement to those police departments and governmental agencies that have proven by their actions and decisions that they have a totally different belief system as to how justice is applied. Yet, as the killings began to mount of unarmed Black men and women by policing agencies, as well as white men without badges, then subsequently to see there was a reluctance to charge and prosecute the perpetrators. This situation began to reveal a myriad of problems far beyond policing protocols. It becomes apparent that the psychic inertia of slavery still exerts force on the current social consciousness. It is evident in the presumption of guilt based on skin color, as well as the circumstances when deadly force is justified. Slavery was one of the founding cornerstones of racism and prejudice in this country, and the desire to romanticize it and sanitize it, along with the failed Confederacy, propelled this biased form of thinking into the 20th century and beyond. It is this unequal application of law and justice, along with the need to correct it, that is the basis of the Black Lives Matter movement. The expression of Black Lives Matter in no way denigrates the fact that all lives matter, but it addresses the specific prejudices and discrimination regularly confronted by the Black community. But the Black Lives Matter issue really strikes to the core of what is good for the commonwealth of this nation. If legal protections are put in place that support the concept Black Lives Matter, then those protections will extend to everyone. Then all lives will matter, irregardless of ethnicity, religion, cultural direction, or sexual persuasion. If indeed we are about justice and equality, and we're not just hypocritically mouthing the words, then we need to confront injustice wherever we find it. My mother used to say, the type of world you want begins at your doorstep. It will be based on the things you are willing to ignore and those that you're willing to fight for. As for me, I will not allow injustice or prejudice to occur in my presence without protest. That was my mother's statement. So I ask you, what type of world do you want?
Greetings. My name is Denizu Jean Tinney, and with me is my wife, Dr. Wallace Ham Tinney. By way of background, we are both retired educators. I'm a visual artist and a writer, also working on a number of historic preservation projects in Miami, including historic Virginia Key Beach Museum Park and the multifaceted slave ship replica project. Dr. Tinney is an eminent literary scholar and an executive board member of the Florida Black Historical Research Project Incorporated, founded by her family.
We both thank Dr. Barth Green for his invitation and his vision in bringing us together in this symposium, at the core of which, most notably, is the sage legacy of our dear mutual friend, the late Dr. Maya Angelou, whose genuine caring and humanitarian wisdom continue to inform so much of our work today.
Both of our academic backgrounds, rather than being in the medical field, are in literary and linguistic studies, which regularly reveal the compelling power of words and language. As such, The words we use shape the thoughts we have and thus the decisions we make and the actions we take. This has particular relevance to the overall purpose of this symposium. At present, the most certain fact about the simultaneous challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 global pandemic and the virulent resurgence of police and extrajudicial violence against citizens, both targeting African Americans strikingly disproportionately, is that there is no question of returning to the old normal, which has produced such intolerable disparity in the first place. The new normal of a harmonious and equitable post-pandemic society will require a new language, new culture, new thinking, new curricula, even in the medical field. We must all give up something to make a difference, so why not cease and desist herewith from being shackled to the language and programmed presumptions of the past? By interrogating the dysfunctional myth of race, or the divisive oppositional labels of black and white, which were contrived in the Americas to divide and conquer. Not to do so is to be complicit in the perpetuation of the problem by perpetuating the language, rather than to be leading the way to the solution. So with that as an introduction, I turn the rest of our presentation over to Dr. Wallace Tinney.
Thank you. I am humbled to have the opportunity to share in this conversation addressed to esteemed medical professionals, a conversation regarding their own expertise, healing. Today, of course, our focus is not about healing the body. It is about healing the wounds of greed and power, the wounds of racism that are festering like an undetected cancer in our society. Wounds, albeit hiding in plain sight for all to see. Tim Wise recently called the wounds of racism the result of a virus that lives in the DNA of the nation, so much so that whatever antibodies it provides clearly falter. These wounds, created out of greed and power, and invisible to the wizened skin of white supremacy, are exacerbated by what has been called white logic, white methods, white ignorance, white fragility. Those were all titles of books and articles addressing the question of healing the wounds of racism. In West Palm Beach, Florida, as an only child, I was taught that as Negro or colored people, our survival was communal, that each one must help one to overcome racism. So today, in honor of the legacies of our ancestors, we ask for support of the scholarship program in neurosurgery and neuroscience, whose implementation and endowment would provide a suture, a beginning, new fibers in our healing process. For we are going to need every amazing scholar available to combat the scourge of global white supremacy, because racism is not only killing Black and brown people, it is also killing our planet. Through unified support, the young neuroscience scholars will use radical new questioning to discern the dancing antibodies right before their very eyes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Detective Pierre Cherry. I've been a police officer in South Florida for over 10 years, working primarily within the inner city. The community here in South Florida is a melting pot of different cultures. In order to better understand the different cultures, you must also understand the struggles that each culture may face. In the profession that we have chosen, we are called upon to be counselors, mentors, healers, and a person that those in need can count on. Today, as we turn on the TV and watch the news and read the headlines, people all over the world are demanding racial equality and a fair share. As medical professionals, in order to better understand the communities and their issues, you must be within those communities. You must be there to ask the people what and how they are feeling and what you can do to make them feel better. One thing that I learned while working within these communities is that the people want to be heard. They want a voice. I encourage police officers to understand and have ties to the community that they serve. When a police officer has ties to the community, they will have a better understanding of the issues that the people in that community face. It would also allow them to show empathy and concerns for the community issues.
Good morning. My name is Barth Green, and I'm the Executive Dean for Global Health and Community Service at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because I'm a humanitarian who's dedicated his life to social justice. And it's not my choice, it's hereditary, it's genetic. My grandparents, my parents, my siblings, my children, they all carry the same gene. Let's even the playing field was the mantra as long as I can remember, and they're still hearing it from me today. Today, we are very committed to the concept that Black Lives Matter. When I was growing up, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My mother was a University of Chicago hippie, a school teacher, who marched with Martin Luther King with my sisters, who used to hose down the Nazis when they marched past my house, and we'd wake up in the morning with swastikas on our house. We'd wake up with crosses burning in our yard, with broken windows. My father, a family physician, integrated every hospital whose staff he joined. That's what we were, that's who we were. And nothing's changed. Today, the University of Miami Department of Neurosurgery is committing to a new program, not just talking or marching, but doing something visible and concrete and important, creating an endowed fellowship in perpetuity for Black high school, college, and medical students to pursue careers in neurosurgery and neuroscience. Why? Look at the numbers. The underrepresentation of Black students and Black practitioners in these areas is shocking. We're going to change that. The money we collect with this effort today will fund this scholarship, and it'll go on forever. It's going to change lives and change opportunities. We're going to share this concept with our colleagues across the nation and globally, and hopefully they'll pick up the ball and run with it, and we'll score a touchdown for equality, to end racism, and to enforce the principles of social justice. Thank you for being here today. Let's do this together. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce the next speaker. And I appreciate the total support and enthusiasm of our chairman, Dr. Alan Levy, to allow this effort not just to move forward, but to become a priority for our department. After 45 years at the University of Miami, one of my dreams came true when Henry Ford was named the Dean of the Medical School. I met Henri after 250,000 people died in 10 minutes in 2010, and we put up a tent hospital at the airport. He was among the first volunteers who flew in, not as the chair of the surgical department of Los Angeles Children's Hospital or the vice dean of the Keck School of Medicine, but he flew in as a humanitarian and as a very skilled pediatric surgeon and traumatologist. He was amazing. Everybody figured out who he was very quickly. I could spend a long time listing his accomplishments, but the two most important for me is the fact he's been chosen to be on the board of trustees of Direct Relief International. And that's the largest NGO of its type that serves organizations around the world in disasters and pandemics, such as we're facing now. He's also on a few other lists, like the Board of Trustees of Princeton, and I can go on and on. But I'd rather you heard from Dr. Ford, who really can speak for himself for sure. What a privilege and honor to have you leading our school. Henri.
Thank you so much, Bart. And thank you for the generous introduction, but also for being such an inspiration for me. You're truly one of the living giants when you come to humanitarian effort, really on par with the work of Albert Schweitzer, Harry Mellon, and certainly Paul Fomer. And in my eyes, you really epitomize the concept of service to mankind. And the University of Miami is truly fortunate to have you. So thank you. It's an honor for me to speak on neurosurgery grand rounds on racial justice. And when I was thinking about what I needed to say, I came up with the question, how is it possible and why should the Department of Neurosurgery hold a special grand rounds to address racism and the need for racial justice? After all, we're not talking about brain surgery. But to really understand what precipitated this, we need to provide the proper context. Without question, the recent horrific racial killings have brought outraged protesters from diverse backgrounds to the streets of many cities, and clearly has resulted in a national and international outcry demanding justice and an end to police violence against Black men and women, as well as long overdue correction of this country's deep racial inequalities. Second, the structural racism that is manifested by deep inequities in housing, employment, income, and education not only contributes to a greater prevalence of underlying chronic health conditions in Black and brown people, but it also keeps them from receiving the accessible, high-quality care that every American deserves. And moreover, as noted by the National Academy of Medicine, even after adjusting for education and economic status, unequal treatment due to racial discrimination exacerbates and perpetuates health disparities. The result, as we've seen, and not surprisingly, is a higher death rate from coronavirus, as well as other conditions in Black and brown people. Police brutality against people of color further endangers the well-being, the health, and the lives of a great number of our patients right here in Miami. So correcting these injustices now by denouncing racism and its deleterious effects on the health of Black and brown people is among the most important and highest missions and priorities of the University of Miami, the Miller School of Medicine, as well as UHealth. And this is especially important if we as a university are going to be the excellent, the relevant, and the exemplary university that President Frank talks about. So the fundamental question before us is, what are we going to do not only to confront racism, but to uproot it from the middle school and UHealth? And how do we adopt a culture that is truly anti-racist? These are some of the challenging questions that student leaders and faculty members of the middle school have posed to us, in particular to me, in the wake of the racial killings. The student leaders delivered to me a thoughtfully crafted 8-page document with numerous action items to address this problem. But as I reflected and analyzed, as I reflected on their requests and analyzed what it is that they were telling me, I realized that merely addressing these action items would be a transactional experience that may not lead to the type of cultural transformation that we need right now under health sciences campus. These unprecedented crises that our nation faces call for enlightened leadership and innovative leadership as well. We should recognize that the problem of racism is multifactorial in nature. It reflects a fundamental lack of diversity, especially when it comes to Black students, Black residents, Black fellows and faculty right here out of our university. It reflects a lack of exposure of majority faculty and students to Black and Brown people, and also a lack of understanding of the cultural experiences of Black and Brown people. Our Black students and residents report a feeling of isolation, a sense that they don't belong here. They report microaggression as well as overt discrimination in how they are treated. Our faculty report the same. They also note that there is a lack of diversity, a lack of salary equity, lack of mentoring, promotion, and retention of Black faculty. That's just to name a few. And surprisingly, as I took a critical look at our composition, I found that there is not a single Black faculty in the basic science departments, and just a few Black PhDs in the clinical departments. That has to change. We have perhaps 3, maybe 4 tenured Black professors at the middle school, including me, and 1 just retired. President Frank and the chair of the Board of Trustees, Hillary Bass, recently convened a meeting of select trustees and top university administrators to review what we are doing to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to Black students and faculty at the University of Miami. In that meeting, I shared that if we are going to fight and uproot racism, and if we are going to be truly anti-racist and promote an optimal learning environment for all members of the middle school and new health community, we must be intentional in our approach. And this is what we are seeing here by the Department of Neurosurgery, and I'm going to get back to that. I've been deeply touched by the number of department chairs who have issued statements condemning racism. The unity has been palpable, and our students and faculty want racial justice, just like the rest of the nation and the international community. This is truly our chance to have a lasting impact, and I'm glad that the Department of Neurosurgery is helping lead that effort. Yesterday, I shared with our community, the department chairs, as well as the faculty in the town hall, that we need to create a task force to fight racism at the middle school. I envision the task force comprising 7 subcommittees, one that will focus on admissions, because we have to ensure diversity. And if we must ensure diversity, we must develop a pipeline of qualified underrepresented minority students, and especially Black students. And this is where I say that I'm truly ecstatic and grateful to the visionary leaders of the Department of Neurosurgery for establishing this endowed fellowship that will clearly enhance the pipeline of qualified Black students in perpetuity. Thank you so very much. We need to have a group that focuses on student affairs, because once we bring in this diverse population of students, we need to make sure that they feel like they belong. We need to have the right types of services that will make them feel fully integrated in this community. We need to have a subcommittee focusing on the curriculum, because we must eliminate racial bias in how we teach them. We have to eliminate racial bias from the curriculum. I know we have addressed that in the new curriculum that is starting, Next Gen MD, but the legacy curriculum needs to be addressed. We need to have a committee that focuses on residents and fellows. Not only must we be able to attract Black and Brown residents and fellows, but again, they must feel included. They must feel a sense of belonging. We do not want Black residents to have to be threatened to be escorted out of the library, our own library, while they are speaking to other Black students, while they are mentoring Black students, because the security guard cannot believe that they really belong here, because one's ID card from when they were doing research had expired, and even though their clinical ID tag was working, the security guard thought that they were imposters trying to get in. And why would anyone want to go hide in a library? God help us. We need to address faculty affairs. The subcommittee focused on faculty affairs. We have to make sure that we develop workshops that teach the entire community about implicit bias, microaggression, as well as macroaggression, and really make us prepared to become anti-racist. We must not only denounce racism, we must become anti-racist. We need to have a committee that focuses on research. And again, I mentioned the fact that we only have we don't have a single Black PhD in our basic science departments. That must change. And last but not least, a committee that will focus on community engagement, both in the context of what we can do to support our community, to be relevant to our community, but also to make sure that our own security guards and police understand that Black and brown people do belong on the health sciences campus. I have shared with my department chairs as well as the faculty yesterday how ever since the pandemic, when I had to give up my suit and give up wearing my suit and bow tie, I've become an invisible face on this campus. I'm just another Black face who is almost irrelevant. That is the problem. This is where you really understand the whole concept of racial prejudice, because I am treated vastly differently than when I was walking around as the dean in bow tie and in fancy looking suits. So these committees hopefully will start working in early July and be ready to prepare their final recommendations to the dean by October 1st. And I've asked all the department chairs to commit their faculty, those who are interested in serving, to excuse them, to protect them, to be able, so that they can really serve on these committees and make meaningful contributions for the sake of creating a more optimal learning environment for all of us. And finally, we will never reach our fullest potential as an academic health system until we can create an environment where Black and brown students, residents, fellows, and faculty feel welcomed and a sense of belonging. That's why we must prioritize diversity, equity, inclusion, and community engagement, but also address promotion and retention. I want to thank Barth Green, I want to thank Dr. Levy, and the entire Department of Neurosurgery for leading in this domain. I am blessed to have you as partners in this effort. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to a very meaningful discussion. Back to you, Alan and Mark.
Thank you so much, Dean Ford, for that powerful and passionate discussion and speech. And we'd like to open up the microphones now for any questions that we can give to the Dean.
Hi, Dean Ford. This is Stephanie, one of the neurosurgery residents. Thank you so much for that talk. That was amazing. You know, I think many people suggest that systemic racism doesn't exist because we've had a Black president, because we have a Black dean. How do you explain to them the effects of systemic racism and how pervasive it is in inhibiting the success of Black Americans to these people?
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. This is really a great question. When we talk about structural racism, people need to understand that those are things that are fundamentally, that's an approach that was incorporated in our system to keep the Blacks disenfranchised. We have to go back to the period of Reconstruction because to put things in historical perspective, Blacks were probably the only immigrants, or one among the very few immigrants who certainly were brought to this country as slaves. They didn't really volunteer to come here. They were really in the bottom of ships, and this is how they came here. And unlike Europeans who came here and were given land to actually farm and build a future. And when we were finally granted our independence, we were not given any piece of land to actually go for it. We had to actually have amendments to the Constitution for us to even have the right to vote. And then from there on, during that period of Reconstruction, there's been a systematic attempt to disenfranchise the former slaves. This is how the Jim Crow laws came into being. The Plessy versus Ferguson ruling, establishing separate but equal. Those are the first examples of what structural racism is about. And the whole notion that in order for you to vote, you had to have had a grandfather who had been voting, and this is newly enfranchised slaves, and you had to pay a certain voting tax, and plus you only had to have, there was a 3/5 rule. So there are fundamental provisions that were meant to keep the Black individual unable to exercise that constitutional right that had been amended for that person to vote and own property. And it wasn't until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that we began to see an attempt to dismantle that problem. And going forward, and you've seen through all sorts of machinations how there's been a systematic attempt to suppress the Black vote, the minority vote in general. So it's something that's ongoing. And then when you look at the fact that what determines health disparities is really a function of your economic status. It's where you live, it's your access to housing, access to education. Those are the things that are going to predict how well you're going to do, what kind of chronic illnesses that you're going to have. So you begin to understand why it is such a difficult task to emerge from this particular hole that underrepresented minorities and different disenfranchised people find themselves. And that's why education has been really the ticket to a better socioeconomic status for all. And if you don't have access to good education, then you're not going to have a chance to really overcome all of these other barriers and begin to even improve your health condition. And yet we also saw that even after while education is fundamental for you to be able to achieve a certain economic status and so forth, but the National Academy of Medicine showed that even for those of us who manage to become successful, racial discrimination still underlies health disparities, despite being in a much higher socioeconomic status. So this is where, when we talk about structural racism, that is what becomes so oppressive for any person of color.
Andy has a question. Andy Dipster.
Hi, Dean Ford. Thank you so much for that impassioned plea. That was very enlightening and inspiring. One thing that you mentioned that I was wondering about how to address on a day-to-day basis going forward is the feeling of not belonging, the feeling of unwelcomeness. Are there a few things that we can do as faculty on our day-to-day basis in our courses, in our research programs to address that?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think this is partly why I think it's crucial for us to have these task forces so we can begin to define what are the best practices to make sure that our residents, students, and faculty members are truly feel engaged. What can we do as an institution? Because it's important to start with an introspective analysis of what can I do to not only condemn racism, but be anti-racist. How do I make this other individual feel more welcome? On a personal level, now I've already said we need a task force, but on a personal level, I think it's important to understand that racism is not a trait that we are born with. It's an acquired, really, it's an acquired trait. And it reflects, as I mentioned before, a fundamental lack of understanding. It's a knowledge gap. It's ignorance, because we don't take the time to understand the cultural experiences of the other group. So listening, learning, studying with a mind to understand is probably the first step in beginning to address or confront the whole problem of racism and how we can begin to build a more optimal environment for all. And the notion of mentoring, really helping people navigate along this complicated path of academic medicine is perhaps the best way to begin to forge a real relationship with some of our struggling faculty members who may feel lost. By taking this level of interest, it will speak volumes as to the desire for this person to not only advance, but also remain a vibrant member of the community. And then it's about making sure that person feels included. We have to say, well, what are the opportunities that exist for advancement? How can I support this person in terms of advancing further in their career? What society am I going to sponsor them for membership in? And not only that, help them advance within that society so that they can hold national office. Because let's face it, when it comes to promotion, I mean, we have some specific metrics that must be met. And these are, race indifferent criteria. You have to publish. So we need to create opportunities for them to be able to publish. They have to be able to achieve some national recognition. So we need to help them get into those national positions, hold offices if possible, but also help them to get opportunities to go give grand rounds at other institutions. I mean, this is a whole developmental pathway that we can establish to help these faculty members become more successful. And I think when we start paying that level of attention, people are going to feel like they truly belong, that there is a caring attitude within the department, within the school, and trust me, that's the first step in terms of retention. So I think this is just one way of addressing it on the individual level, but I'm hoping that the task force is going to present a more comprehensive approach for us to do it. And the other point is that you are more likely to attract other underrepresented minority students and faculty to the extent that they see you have some representation already, and especially in positions of leadership. So that has to be part of the formula for us to begin to address this problem, the sense of belonging. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Dr. Ford, my name is Samir Soor. Thank you very much for speaking with us. I think this is an important conversation, and we certainly appreciate your comments. You've mentioned sort of the idea of representation, and I think that that's something, a small step that our department has tried to take forward. And I think thinking in a larger sense, that's often the first kind of thing that departments such as ours that really sit at the top and are not kind of boots on the ground when you think about addressing economic, housing issues, really true systemic issues. But representation does matter. And we can offer a scholarship, and that's something that is important. But I think, as you've alluded to, doing the real work means making this campus, making this faculty, making the student body, the staff, everybody here, making it more representative, more diverse. And I think, although this word has been co-opted a little bit in recent years, affirmative action has been sort of one of the pillars of trying to change an academic environment into one that sort of better suits our ideals and what we think we should achieve. Do you have ideas about how affirmative action can be implemented? What is the University of Miami doing? Are there directives that can be in place, and how we deal with that? Because there's a lot of pushback to these ideas of affirmative action and how we talk about that.
Yeah, so thank you very much for this question. Obviously, it's a crucial one. Affirmative action sometimes is confused with the concept of taking unqualified people and putting them in positions where they don't belong. That is fundamentally wrong. What we're talking about is when we look at someone's track record, when we look at someone's ability to overcome adversity and get into a position, then we have to say, that person's being able to overcome those barriers speaks volume about the potential that this person has for accomplishing even greater things when given even better opportunities. I probably stand here as exhibit A in exactly what affirmative action can do. It wasn't that I wasn't qualified I came from the inner city. I was born in the backwoods of Haiti and then ended up in Brooklyn and got a full scholarship to go to a place like Princeton. And let's face it, that was the transformational step in my being here today, addressing you as a dean of the Miller School of Medicine. And I'm sure that Princeton could have populated its school. I mean, since I'm on the board, I'm on the executive committee of the Board of Trustees of Princeton, I can speak that we could populate the school with people with 800 SATs, perfect scores, everything, GPA of 4.0 or greater. That would be almost just a very homogeneous crowd. Would that really create the type of great university environment that Princeton and many of the other Ivy League schools and UM really is trying to develop? Without question, there is no excellence without diversity, because diversity brings excellence and it offers a completely different perspective on a number of things. And certainly being given this opportunity to step on the campus of Princeton University opened all sorts of other doors that I was able to just push my way through so that someday and today I can sit here. So the concept of affirmative action is about taking people who have been able to overcome and who have achieved and have demonstrated that they can not only meet the rigor of an academic curriculum, but also exploit the opportunities that exist to actually to go even further. So that's the misnomer that we must clarify. I am thrilled that from the top down, from the Board of Trustees to the President, that there is a commitment to transform the University of Miami, to make sure that we have a diverse community, that we have more Black faculty representation, but not only that, more Black students, Black residents, fellows, and so forth, but to make sure they feel included, to make sure that they are promoted, and ultimately come up with a plan for retention. That's what we are aspiring for. That is what I'm going to work on. And that is what, in partnership with the Department of Neurosurgery, I hope we are going to be able to accomplish.
Dean Ford, I mean, Barth? I was just going to say, Dean Ford, thank you so much for that speech and for answering our questions. There's a lot of people to thank for putting this on. I want to thank Barth for helping arrange the vast majority of our speakers today, and the speakers themselves for committing time to give us their message. Ingrid Menendez, Ingrid Van Toon, and Roberto Suazo for putting together the videos and organizing the session. Our executive committee, including Jacques Marcos, Rick Komatar, and Mike Wang, for their support of this endeavor within the department. And finally, I think a lot of people who are trainees ask, what can I do? What can I do to help? And I can tell you that both Samir and Stephanie Chen were instrumental in talking to the leaders of the department, sitting them down, telling us their feelings, telling us where this should go. And it's just a pleasure to have those type of people in the department who keep questioning and asking us to move forward. So thank you as well. Barth, any closing comments, and then we'll let everybody get back to work.
No, it's all been said, and we're just grateful for everybody's involvement and And now it's time for us to show our stuff.